Chris Ruflin here again. Let's Do More show. On this week's episode, it's episode number 13. We have a gentleman, Mario, here today that talks about so many important things. This gentleman from the ages of 12 to 17 witnessed over 20 murders. He's been shot, stabbed at, rolled up in a carpet, and left for dead. Between his affiliations and his addiction, there's really no reason that this man should have survived any of it. I hope that everybody today can listen and gain some really insightful advice from him, not only on recovery, but life in general, thinking and just changing your life. Today, he's doing a lot of good in the recovery world and is striving to be the best man that he can be. And again, it's a miracle that he survived. Please sit back, enjoy the show. And as always, please share these episodes, get the word out, get the messages out. Let's help as many people as we can. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Let's Do More show. I'm Chris Ruflin, the host and founder of the show. And it's great here to be again with you today. I believe today is our 13th show, which is cool. They're going pretty quick. And we appreciate all the support from everybody watching the shows. Today, I've got another good friend, right? I announce that all the time. I say I have a good friend on the shows. These people are probably like, how many good friends do you have? A lot. Being in recovery, you get a lot. But I've got your friend Mario here, and I'm really excited to hear his story today. Some parts I've heard. We've recently met, but he's a gentleman that I'm super proud of for what he's been doing, both with his recovery and escaping a life that most people would not survive, and most people don't survive, right? So we're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about, his involvement in the lifestyle he was living and what brought him to recovery and the whole deal. So Mario, thanks for coming on, man. Welcome.
Appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, dude, for sure. I'm glad that you were able to come on and be vulnerable. And thank you for doing that, by the way, right? Like, I think a big thing in recovery, and I talk about it all the time on the show, is being vulnerable. It saves lives, right?
Yeah.
And I always ask my guests, for those of you listening or watching, I ask, what are the topics or the things that you don't want me to talk about, right? And I love it when I get the answer, there's nothing. I thought about it and there's nothing.
Good, bad, or ugly, it's my story.
Because these always go better when we're not like scripting it or planning it out. And we don't do that, by the way. That's why if you see any things happen or anything that I don't cut out, I don't really do a lot of editing. I like it to be totally natural and just an off-the-cuff conversation so people are getting the real. So let's start, man, with a little bit about your story, right? Tell me about, go back growing up. I always like to give a little basis for people on what life was like for you. Now, you're not from here, obviously,
Nope.
right?
Detroit.
Yep, Detroit. And you've been living in a few places, but you were not only just in Detroit, you're in like the rough area of Detroit.
Yeah, I've been all over. I've been in the worst and the worst and the best and the best, and that's kind of part of my story. So going back, actually, I had an interesting upbringing. So I'm adopted. I was adopted twice. And my parents, I had mentioned this first off because it kind of changes things, and it'll get into a little bit more verified later. But my parents are Caucasian, my adopted parents. And growing up in the worst part of Detroit and having
Crazy, man.
white parents and having a parent
Yeah, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, having a parent who worked at Cranbrook Kingswood, which is actually one of the best schools in the nation. It's like a school that's like a private school. All like some of the richest kids send their parents send their kids there. It was different because I was growing up in the worst of the worst, going to school in the best of the best. And I was either too black for the school, too poor, or I was too white with white parents, like coconut. They describe it in the hood. So
oh man,
yeah, trying to fit into both worlds, it was a struggle, definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, you were adopted twice. So
yeah,
talk about the first time. So let's go back to that part of your story. So adopted twice. Did you ever meet your parents?
No, I didn't meet them. Don't know their names. All I remember is the last little memory I have is not the best memory. Found out I was kind of neglected. I was kept in like a dog kennel of a cage, so they didn't have to feed us. They didn't have to worry about me like crawling off or anything.
How many kids were there?
I actually have 2 biological siblings. Don't know where they are in the world.
So your birth parents were keeping you guys in dog kennels?
Yes,
wow.
Dog kennels, a whole shebang, not malnourished and everything. So eventually we were taken away.
Right. So you're put into the system, DCFS and all that stuff, and sent into foster care for a while until you were adopted, right? So the first adoption, did you guys have from that point, obviously you didn't have a normal upbringing. How old were you when that happened, by the way?
I was anywhere from 2 to 2.5 years old when I got taken away from my biological parents.
Pretty critical years to not be in a dog kennel, for crying out loud, right? I mean, any years is not okay to do that, man. Yeah, your story's inspiring, dude. It's inspiring, right in just 5 minutes in. I think most people would have a big enough reason out of that to not try anymore, right? So how was adopted life like?
Adopted life was good. My family was good to me. They're still good to me. I consider them my parents. Don't really say adopted parents. I consider them my mother and my father. And I never really felt like I was part of the family. I was kind of like the black sheep of the family, like off the rib. I only had like 2 other foster brothers who I connected with. Didn't end up getting adopted into their family. The lady took 2 of the kids and actually introduced me to my parents now. yeah, it was hard. Grew up, never felt like I was like, had friends at school. Couldn't take any of the kids home because I didn't want them to see my house. We're all
Right.
living in mansions and everything.
Yeah.
And the minute the kids in the hood find out where I went to school, like I'd get beaten up. I'd get like hit with like bottles and like, anytime I'd come out of the house and everything like that and go hang out, like I'd end up getting in a fight or getting jumped.
Oh,
So yeah, it was a little tough
crazy.
off the rip.
Yeah, crazy, man. Was it normal childhood outside of that? I mean, were you with your brothers and sisters? Did they get adopted or?
They actually, I have no idea where they went. We were all separated and
Gotcha.
no history, no nothing. I haven't really wanted to dig into the biological history as much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough, man. That's tough. I mean, we all say normal childhood, right? But what is that really? You know what I mean? There's
Exactly.
really no normal. I think everybody has their trauma.
Yeah.
You've been through a lot of things with it though. But so you're growing up. I mean, were your parents pretty active with you? Like, I mean, good, loving parents. Like, what was the situation there?
They were good parents. I was always closer with my mom, still am. My dad, he's kind of like old school. They're older parents too. They're about 71, 72 right now.
Okay,
And I'm 25, so if that says anything.
right. So they adopted you pretty late.
Yeah,
Yeah,
adopted me very late. My dad's like old school, old minded. He's kind of like you get a scrape, you deal with it. Anything in life, like you gotta overcome it. Like anybody else can overcome anything, so you can too. So he was kind of like the hard one on me. My mom was like the soft one, and kind of exploited that a little bit. The older,
oh sure.
but
Yeah, we're
yeah,
manipulative as kids.
yeah,
I
yep,
mean, kids are normally manipulative, but if you've got some kids that have this
yeah,
disease inside of them waiting, right,
exactly.
we're even more so. All right, so yeah, man. So I mean, growing up foster care, again, we have another story here on the show today, guys, about addiction and recovery,
Hmm.
which is the main thing that I'm passionate about. Most people have heard the show know I lived at active my addiction for about 15 years. I started late with it, and I ended even later. And it was just as much of a mess. And I think we all have that common thread.
Yeah,
But the thing I'm excited about in sharing your story with people is you got into a lot of stuff. You got into a lifestyle, you got into affiliations, you got into a
yeah,
lot of war zone areas,
yeah,
basically, is what I would call them. I mean, you've been shot a few times. You've been shot
yep,
quite a few times, but you've been hit 3 times. The
yep,
other time's in a vest,
yep,
stabbed,
yep,
right? You've
yep.
been beat up, kidnapped. I mean, all that stuff, right? And you've
Woken
also
up,
spent some
rolled in a
time
carpet under a bridge. The
woken up,
whole,
rolled in a carpet under a
yep,
bridge.
we call it
Wow,
carpet burrito. Yeah,
man, crazy.
yeah,
And it's crazy, Mario. Is this is if someone were to meet you without knowing your past, I don't think anyone would ever know it.
no,
You know what I mean? You really come off level headed, dude, and I know you care for people,
yeah,
and you're excited about your recovery. And there's a lot of people out there that are just struggling with addiction, let alone the carpet burrito, right?
yeah.
And having to go through all that. So, do you remember the first time that you used a substance, and what was that?
I do, I do. So at school, there's this one older kid. I'll never forget him. I'm not gonna say his name, but I'll never forget him. And he ended up having like some edibles. And for some reason, like I'd watched the movie like Pineapple Express. I'll never forget it. Like he had the strain like
Yeah,
Pineapple Express. So I was like, oh, okay, let me try this. And first time I ate the edibles, I remember just being in my bed. And I remember like that feeling of my body almost essentially like rising outside of itself and
right.
like floating towards the ceiling. And ever since then, I was hooked because it gave me that feeling that I never had and the feeling I always wanted, which was to be connected, to feel like I'm grounded, to feel like I have support. And like that first drug and that first use gave me everything that I always wanted. From then on, like it was just on like that.
It's crazy. So I asked that question to a lot of guests, anybody who's dealing with recovery and addiction, and I don't think anybody's ever explained it as good as that, right? I have to kind of prompt them and say, like, how did it make you feel? Because
Yeah,
that's exactly the same feeling we all have. So for
yeah,
people watching the show that wonder what it's like for a loved one, or if you yourself are dealing with an addiction and you haven't found recovery yet, we get it, right? It's the closest to normal and being okay we can get
hmm,
as an addict or alcoholic is using,
yeah.
right? Drinking, using, whatever it is for you. It's all the same stuff when it comes down to it, right? So you remember the feeling with it. And how old were you when this happened?
I was 12 years old.
You were
12
12.
years
So you
old.
started at 12
Yeah,
and you're 25 now.
yeah,
Okay. Well, you spent enough time active in the addiction to hear some things and you see some things, right?
definitely, definitely.
So fast forward a little bit,
Okay.
you're in middle school at that point, right? You
Yeah,
just finished up middle school. So you go
yeah.
into high school. When did all the other stuff start coming to part of your story?
The
And
minute,
I don't know if should I use the word gangs or is that,
yeah, it's
I mean,
fine.
is that fine?
Affiliated
I don't
gang,
ever
yeah,
know, what the
yeah,
right terminology is.
yeah.
I'm not that politically correct on the show, but I swear we talk
That's
about
all right.
God.
Hey,
So tell me, man, how did that all happen? I mean, obviously we talk about people being in a product of their environment, right?
yes.
And I think you're definitely an example of that. And your product of going into a different environment and becoming part of that too,
Mhm.
which is a beautiful part we'll talk more about. But talk to me about that part of your life and how long that lasted, and maybe we'll go into a couple of stories you have just to help
Definitely.
people understand how chaotic that really is. And it's almost an addiction in itself, right?
It was, it was. So right around the age of 12, I was starting to get out of eighth grade and go into ninth grade. And at that point, I had learned that like school was not my thing. Like my ADD, I have dyscalculia, long story short. I'm not good
Mm-hmm.
at math and everything like that.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what that is. My daughter has
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So I was realizing I'm not good at all at school. And like, I just didn't feel like I belonged. Ended up meeting up with a couple people, ended up hanging out with some older kids in the hood. And they pretty much like gave me that instant, like, family belonging, that instant gratification,
Right.
that acceptance that I never had before. And I ended up like, I'd go to school. That's when I got into Adderall, and I'd take Adderall. And then at nighttime, I just run around the streets. So I was trying to like, I thought I like had everything down. I was like, oh, this Adderall will heal me. Now I actually want to do school. Now I want to take notes.
Right.
Like now I'm actually doing decently. And then, oh, hey, here's a group of people who like, yeah, it was grooming, and yeah, I was affiliated. Still, like, you're kind of in for life, and you can change your life. And like, what I want to do is give back. I want to go and like, teach kids who are like going into a lifestyle that I went into, that they don't have to do that. That they can like, uplift themselves, help each other. You don't have to like pop Percocets and like, run around the streets. It's not cool. Like, so
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's two addictions that you're dealing with there at that point. You've got the substance part, and then you've got being addicted to the lifestyle. And when you say you were groomed, like, what does that mean?
essentially, though, the first thing that would happen is I was always like a fighter at that point. I'd grown up, and that was one thing I was good at. Not proud of it anymore, but that was definitely one thing I was good at. One thing they'll do is they'll take like all the youngsters, they'll put you in like a circle with all like the old heads standing around you, and they'll get you to fight each other. In reality, like what they're doing and what I realized later is they're trying to see like who has that, what they call it, that dog in them, like who can fight, like, who can defend themselves, like who isn't afraid to like go listen to somebody say, hey, go do this, and then like do it.
Right.
And I thought it was like, like I was good at it. I was winning a lot of fights. And even when I didn't win, like that inner self that like, wanted like to feel anything besides like the normal feelings I was feeling, like I liked it because, like as long as I had physical pain, I wasn't worried about the emotional pain.
Wow.
But I was, yeah.
So were you picked out? I mean, do these guys like come to your schoolyard or something, or they just kind of watch you and then they approach you and say, "Hey,
They watch you.
wow,
Yeah.
crazy."
Next thing you know, you're riding around in like, a couple $100,000 cars, Rolls Royces. You go into the studios and like hanging out with all these older people. They got all the chains, they got all the money, they got all the girls, and like they're just like
All the
giving you
drugs.
money. Yeah, all the drugs and
Right.
everything like that too. So, you just feel like, oh, I found home finally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's almost a similar feeling, it sounds like, to when we try our first drug or drink,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
think it sounds like to me you had this like perfect storm going on, right? You're living in this area where that's kind of the normal, number one. You don't know your birth parents, you've been adopted out, you've already got this conflict kind of weirdness of feeling like not in anywhere. And then we
Yes.
also have that as an addict or alcoholic. We naturally feel like we don't fit in.
Hmm.
That's why we turn to drugs and drink, is because it allows us to maybe lower those inhibitions enough or feel a little bit more social, right? But for me, it was that same feeling of just finally I felt okay in my body. I was funny, I was social, people wanted to be around me. And for me, that also turned a big part of my story where in the end, before I found recovery, I was throwing these giant parties at my house, right? And we
Yeah.
had this big swimming pool in the backyard that I kept at like 110 degrees.
Okay.
So it's like a giant hot tub.
Yeah.
People were like, "Oh, it's the biggest hot tub in in the state or
Yeah.
whatever." I would just buy all these drugs for all these people, right? I was the one who was that guy with the big chains. I didn't have the big chains because I'm white as fuck. You know what I mean? But no, I was doing that, right?
Yeah.
And it was the only way at that point in my life I could even have friends, and they weren't even friends, right?
No.
So how long of this period of your life where you're affiliated and running a gun and stuff? How long was that? How many years were you involved in that?
I was involved in it, honestly, all the way to I pretty much got to Brighton sober living and Brighton residential. That's when I finally was like, you know what, I'm gonna shed this identity. I'm gonna see if there really is more to me. Because I always felt like at a certain point after like 8 or 9 years that this is all I'm going to be.
Right.
And then every time I tried to get my life together, like I'd either go to treatment or I'd try to get sober. Like people would hear my backstory, and a lot of times people would get afraid. They'd get intimidated.
Yeah.
Or people would only see like the colors. People would only see like what they heard on TV and everything like that. And then I'd feel like I didn't belong. My brain, like, is still like ill and mentally unwell. And the first thing I'd go back to is this is where I belong. This is the only people that accept
Right.
me.
It was my home.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's weird because in such a chaotic lifestyle where you got shot so many times and
Yeah.
stabbed and burrito carpeted or carpet
Yeah.
burritoed or whatever. That's hilarious. Even though we probably should joke about it.
Yeah.
I mean, even though all that stuff was going on, it still felt like the safest place for you, right?
Exactly. It's crazy. Some of the safest I've ever felt was I was looking around the room. Next thing you know, there's like 20 people in one house. The back door's been boarded up and like barricaded. There's no way out. You got cops coming and knocking on the door, like trying to serve warrants. You're looking around the room, like you might go and put your hand in like a couch cushion. You might like pull out a gun that somebody like accidentally left there, things like that. Cockroaches all over, and like, yeah, bullets coming through the wall at random times. But just because you have the people with you and you've seen like actual evidence and gone through things with these people that, yeah, they might have your life like your back, and they might like, take your life seriously, and you don't care.
Yeah, it's all transactional too, right?
Yes,
I think that's
very
the
much
thing.
so.
I have this mentor who's been teaching me about being a non-transactional person, and it's basically giving more value to somebody than you're asking in return. And it naturally works out where that ends up happening in a much better way, a much more organic, like real way.
Yeah.
But addiction and the people we hang out with, the lifestyle you're in, and the addiction, it's all transactional, right? It's like, I'll watch your back as long as you're doing this, or hey, I'm your friend as long as you have the dope, or hey, reverse that, I'm your friend as long as you have the dope.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's tough. So what was it like? Tell us a couple. I like this show to be really real, and we were talking earlier about some things before the show that you're sharing with me. I don't know how deep you want to get into it, but I want people that are in that lifestyle, when we send this show out and with the algorithm things that we kind of track to, it's probably going to get in front of some people who want to get out, who are Googling, hey, I want to get out of this gang. What do I do? Or, trying to figure out a way to do that. And I think you could provide some inspiration with it. But what are some of the stories, like in the worst of the worst? Talk to me about some of that and share with us what was happening.
So I'll even go back to like 12, 13. First murder I ever witnessed, I was just before my 13th birthday. And we were at a party, and next thing you know, a whole bunch of shots rang out, and I didn't even realize it. The music was so loud. Next thing you know, I had blood on my face, and the person next to me ended up getting their head shot off with a 410 slug.
And you're 12, 13 years old.
Yeah, yeah. And that's when you really dive into the substances, because your brain, like, it's not like I'm going to go home to my family and tell them about these things. I'm already living a double life at this point. I'm like wearing a suit and singing in like the master singers. I'm going to school, and, like I'm in like the American Me essay. I'm doing well in school, and I'm leading this whole double life. So I can't tell anybody at home about it, and I don't know how to cope. So that's when I really started drinking. That's when I really started diving in. And yeah, for anybody out there, yeah, I'm affiliated. I'm a blood. I've got my stripes, my stars. I've done everything that, under the sun, seen everything under the sun. And it took me a long time to realize it's not cool. And it took me a long time to realize that there is a way out. A lot of people, they say like, like blood in, blood out. And, it's not, that's not the case. There are ways out. Yeah, you have to do a lot of things to get to a certain point, and you don't have to do those things. People always just assume that like when somebody tells you to go do this, you have to.
Right.
No, like you can think for yourself. And if there's anything I would have told my younger self, it's like, don't take the things that people would have told you, and don't take the labels that people would have put on you. Because I was put on, like, the label was put on me by 10th grade, even by my dad. He was like, almost wish I wouldn't have adopted you. And like the road you're going down, you're going to end up like dead, homeless, in jail. And at that point, I wanted to go to like U of M, University of Michigan. I wanted to like go to state. And I could have done it, especially sports was my thing. That's like was my flow, my meditation, and that's still one of my greatest things. But yeah, I took those identities and ran with it. But like a few stories, yeah, 13, 12, I saw a couple of murders. Next thing you know, it's 14, 15, and I'm doing real bad in school. My parents are catching on to what I'm doing at home. My dad and I are arguing. I'm getting kicked out of the house. So then I moved in with my older foster brother, and he's the one who got me into it. We have two foster brothers, 1 year older, one's 2 years older. And one of them, the one who's 1 year older, he was kind of like the mama's boy of the group, which was great. And the older one, he was the one who got affiliated. He was the one who was running the streets. I remember I was still doing like, decently, and I'd see him come home and he'd have his face all messed up. But I wouldn't even notice that. I noticed all the money he had. I noticed how he always had females around him. I noticed that, like, anywhere he went, like, people would yell his name and know his name. So I ended up hanging out with him. I ended up moving in with him. And we had an 8th floor apartment with a little balcony. And he was on probation, so he couldn't smoke anymore. He can only drink. And he turned me into the drinker that I was. I'd wake up in the morning and he'd, like, slap me away just as he'd drink, and he'd make me chug a bunch of shots. I remember like throwing up for the first week, like every night and every day, like still just over the balcony, like into the parking lot. And then like every time I throw up, he'd beat me up. I remember spending 8 hours a day in a car just going around and selling weed in a 50-mile radius. So we're just sitting there just going to house to house to house.
And just to, I want you to keep going exactly on that timeline, okay? But a couple things I heard there that I want to point out. Number one, like you had to start really numbing out to make any of this acceptable.
Definitely.
Right? And this is what all addicts and alcoholics do. Drugs and alcohol are not our problem.
Yeah.
Our perception is our problem. Our perception of the world, of ourselves, of the people closest to us, right? We're naturally pessimistic. It's taken a lot of work for me to be somebody who tries to see the silver lining in everything, and I have to live that way today if I want to really live a rewarding life and stay sober. The other thing that I heard in there, and I wanted to address real quick, was there's going to be people that have heard stuff like this, or they see stuff in movies, and there's a lot of people out there who just think it's a choice to live that lifestyle. I mean, after hearing some of your story just this far in so far, clearly there was no choice. I mean, your brother's feeding you alcohol, drugs all around you. You were kind of absorbed into this, and this is what I think people say, like a product of the environment, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so go on with where you were at there. I want to go back to that timeline. That was kind of cool hearing all that.
Yeah, so at this point, I'm living with him. We're driving around, spending all day driving around, bringing him back money because he was staying in the house with his girlfriend. And
because you probably couldn't go out there without.
Yeah. And I thought I was doing good, like getting beat up and everything. But every time I'd bring back the money, he'd be really proud of me. He'd go out and throw a little party for me, everything like that. And that's the point that I gave up on school 100%.
Right.
And jumping a little bit forward to senior year, I went to probably 2 days of school every fucking week. Honestly, 2 days of school. Oh, I forgot I can swear.
No, you're good to go, man.
Anyway, yeah. So I went to school 2 fucking days of the week, and the rest of the time I'd be skipping class. And all these kids, they got rich parents. They're not gonna go to the hood. So I became the dealer essentially in school, especially because I learned they're gonna pay 5 times as much, everything like that. And to me, that was my way to be cool with these kids. Even though now that I'm older, I realized I was just fulfilling almost a stereotype, which is okay, the black kid on scholarship in a nice school who's selling drugs. Yeah, but to me, it was that connection and that belonging.
Right. And it's crazy how much of a stronger pull that was. Or when you said, my brother would come with his face all messed up, I wouldn't even notice it. I just noticed the money. And it's interesting because all those things in that lifestyle appeal to our basic human, wants, desires, and needs a lot of times, so it's crazy to me that you're making your way out of this. Did you ever feel in this period where you're selling at school and you're driving around for him and stuff, did you ever feel like you're being used by a gang, or did you ever feel like, that you were just some pawn in the deal, or did it always feel like you were, just part of?
Honestly, maybe I should have felt used. However, it felt like I was part of, because some of those situations, by this time in senior year, I've witnessed over 15 murders in person.
15 murders?
At least.
So from 12 years old to 12 years old to 17, you've already seen that many murders. Wow.
Definitely. I've held a couple of friends while they bled out and died. Got to the point where people would, in parties or trap houses, they'd overdose. And next thing you know, since it's an abandoned house, you'd be leaving them in the attic because nobody's going to turn them in. Nobody, at that point, the family's given up on them. They think they're going to go missing anyway. So you're just leaving people. You go into the bathroom, somebody would have shot up 30 minutes later. Suddenly you realize you're oh, where's so-and-so? Where's so-and-so? Go to the bathroom and, they're turning blue. And
wow.
Yeah, so I'd witnessed a lot at this point. But yeah, back to the affiliation, I really thought I was a part of it and really thought I was belong, because once you really get in and you dive in, I was good at what I did because I really thought that was my calling. I thought that was going to be the only people who accepted me. I thought that was going to be people who had my back. And they did have my back. There's a lot of situations that I wouldn't be sitting here, unless people would have had my back. I got the 2 bullet holes right here. Got another bullet hole in my hand. I got, stab wounds on my side. And all those scars, a lot of those times, was situations to where I made it out and other people might not have.
What are those? I'm just curious. What do those scars mean to you now? Now that you're living a different life, you're in recovery, and you're soaking up like a sponge, in my view, which is amazing to see. What do those remind you of now when you look at them?
The scars, especially in the prisoning, which is all gang affiliated on this side, those remind me of a lifestyle and a person who I will do anything and everything to not be, and almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that I want to change, to make sure that I change.
I think that's so cool how we can take moments of really despair and just straight up destitute. I mean, it's crazy enough just to hear one of the stories you have, man. And when you compound them all the things you've been through, if someone were to bet on you ever getting out of the lifestyle, they would have not taken the bet. Most people, right? And it's hard. It's hard to hear these.
Yeah.
One of the things that's hard for me to hear, Mario, as you're talking about this stuff is that a lot of us acts and alcoholics, we haven't experienced that type of a life.
Yeah.
There is a portion of us that have, but like the majority probably have not seen 20 murders by the time they're 17 years old. And we talk about how we're numbing out just for our emotional reasons. It takes me back a little bit to hear your story and think about the reasons and the times that I thought it was justified to use when there's someone like you going through that stuff. And you literally were having to do that to survive. You would have gone insane without something to make you forget and allow you to sleep.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes even allow me to stay awake. And that's how I got into the amphetamines.
Right.
It was because like, as long as like, you're speeding and you're going, like if you don't have anybody to like watch your back, because the older I got and after I got out of prison, like it was just me, myself and I. So a lot of situations I would take myself, and you take yourself anywhere you go. So I wasn't ready to change, didn't want to change, couldn't change at that point. So every time I take myself, I'd be taking myself alone to different cities, different places, different like areas that were all like really bad. And at that point, like,
and no one's going to talk you out of this, right? I mean, I want to point that out. Like one of the key things you said there, which is pertinent to anyone listening as well, is you do have to be ready.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you get into recovery and you've been around for a while and you're like maybe mentoring people or doing work with people in other programs and stuff. It's hard because you already know that going in that like there's nothing I can say or do that's going to make this person get sober, right? If I have a child struggling with addiction, there's nothing I can say or do. They have to be ready. And even as being that person, it's crazy how that readiness, it's not something that's super apparent to us either. And then one day you kind of wake up and you go, hey, I'm just not into this anymore. Another experience I want you to talk about is like these trap houses that people would hang out in. And, a lot of times people think that like partying and using drugs is something fun for us.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it starts as fun sometimes. And there is a choice in the beginning of what we do a lot of times. I don't think anyone put in your shoes would have made any type of a different choice, honestly. I can't see somebody being in that environment and going through things you went through and something put in front of them that relieves them and go, oh, no, I'm good. I don't want to make that choice, And then once we start using, there is no choice, right? A lot of people ask people, what's their drug of choice? And I always say, what is your drug of no choice? Because I never had a drug of choice. By the time I was addicted to the things I was addicted to, there was no choice whether I was going to pick up or not. I've told a few people this story, and I guess I'll share it too because you're being really vulnerable with yours. But I remember one day, in my addiction, it was after I'd relapsed. I tried to kill myself with every relapse because I had a substantial amount of time sober. Then I relapsed many times and kept clawing my way back, and in a lot of regards still am. But I remember one time I was railing a line of something, and I'm like bawling, bro. I'm like crying, right? And the line's sitting there on my desk, and it's like so wet I can't even sniff it. And so what do? I like lick it up, and that type of stuff is not fun, right? I mean, so these houses you're around, these like trap houses, and these places you're going in and out of, you were telling me about one a little earlier. What did that look like?
They're horrible. Long story short, eventually I got caught up, went to prison, got out of prison, didn't have, my family was setting, hard boundaries on me, which I'm very grateful for now. So I was on my own, on parole, didn't have anywhere to go. So I ended up like back on the streets essentially. And we were hanging out in Jackson, Michigan, which is a very, very...
That's right. You told me about Jackson.
Yeah.
I probably won't be visiting that one.
No, it's a very, very high area. And having nowhere to go, one night I remember I was just walking. One thing I'd do is like, this is the point where things stop being fun, like you said. And at one point I was walking and I would just drink until I woke up, until I blacked out. And I was drinking, ended up like yelling at some random people, ended up getting shot at. And I was walking by this house and the people were like, what are you doing? Like, was that you just who like got shot at down the block? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I didn't get hit. Like,
you're so desensitized. You're just like, that's just normal Thursday, Tuesday night here.
I'm like, I'm just going to go yell at the next car who like, cuts me off too. Like, it doesn't matter because any pain, especially fighting and any pain that I could feel beyond the like emotional pain would be fine. But they're like, come on inside. So I go inside and they got like a mattress on the floor just inside, like, in the living room. They got fit 13 people in one house. They have no like electrics, no plumbing, no nothing. All they got is a toilet with no sink, and you have to fill up a bucket from the kitchen that like, you clean your dishes with in order to flush the toilet by pouring it down. Cockroaches, bed bugs, about 30 to 35 people coming in and out of the house like at all hours of the night because everybody there was using. And it was just pretty much like we call them the bandos, the abandoned houses. So I was staying in that one, and we had about 4 other ones in like a mile radius or so. And what we were doing is we just lured all the lost souls, all the people who had no hope, all the people that the world gave up on, like people who just like stopped caring. And we just go in, we'd like, break a window out. We'd like, some of them have electricity. So next thing you know, you're taking the stove, boiling 2 pots of water on the stovetop, with the oven open on full blast just to try to heat it, something like that. Or you're just like, burning hand sanitizers when it's real cold in the winter in like a little tin just so you can keep your hands warm. But they were bad, man. They were bad. Like you got people getting stabbed all the time in them. You couldn't afford to sleep unless you had like 3 or 4 friends you really trusted with your life. And I say
Right.
friends, but transactional, like you said.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing you pointed out there was like all the lost souls gathering together that society gave up on. A big purpose that I put behind this show is like stigma stomping. Right?
Yeah.
Because you hear a story like that, and I know a lot of people might listen to this and go, oh, yeah, what a bunch of losers or whatever else. And that's okay. They can have their opinion. It doesn't affect us. But I do want to try to change the stigma in a lot of ways. And I think it's important to point out that you weren't a lost soul. I mean, here you are today, so you're doing good stuff, right? You're back in communication with your family.
Oh, yeah.
You got a child that you're kind of working on things with there too. And that's a whole other part of your story. So, I mean, I think it's important that as a society, we help where we can. Doesn't mean that somebody's going to be sober forever, or that they're going to be grateful you even help them. But that's our job as human beings here on this planet, in my opinion, is to love and be tolerant and to be helpful to mankind. Yeah. So when I see someone out there struggling that's asking for money, I give it. Yeah. And I get comments, whether it's from someone in the car or other people that might hear about this stuff. They're like, oh, well, they're just going to buy drugs. And to me, it doesn't matter. Like, if they're in a position where they're having to ask for that, clearly it's needed in some way. Yeah. And maybe they're going through the type of pain that you're going through, and that's the only thing that's going to keep them alive today. True. There's many days the only thing that kept me alive was a drug. Yeah. Right? Because I was high enough to where I didn't have to feel everything that was making me want to die. Yeah. Well, let's get back into the story. Let's get into the back part of this. I want to have a conversation more based around recovery. So you end up getting into recovery. Before you got to this point and you went to some treatment centers and things like that, do you remember the day where you had that final decision of like, I'm not going to do this anymore? I'm done with this crap?
I do. That day actually came out here in Utah. Yeah, I moved out here to Utah. I knew the only thing that I had to change was everything. I knew there were way too many familiar faces, places, everything in Michigan, anywhere in Detroit or northern Michigan, anywhere. So essentially, and like you said, I do have a daughter. She was born when I was sadly incarcerated in prison. Mother, my child, she's got an aunt and uncle with 2 other adopted kids, a perfect, like a white picket fence family. So it hurt, like signing away my rights, especially during the COVID where they couldn't do visitations. I couldn't see her, couldn't see the family, couldn't see the mother of my child, to go through that process. Like I was just going through that process over a 15-minute phone call. But yeah, I signed away the rights of my child. And that's one of the defining factors that had me come out here is like somebody told me a story about them meeting their kid when they were 10 years old. First thing she asked was, Dad, why did it take so long? And that was a moment when I got too tired, like you said. I remember sleeping on a park bench, actually. And it was right outside of City Hall. And I figured I was close enough to where I could sleep there and not get arrested. And I was close enough to, like, the police type situation to where I wouldn't have to worry about, like, watching my back.
Right.
And I remember just crying. I was so cold. I was freezing. I just, didn't have a coat. I had a blanket that some 60-year-old, like other homeless dude was on another park bench. He saw me just sitting there shivering all night. And he ended up giving me like this old ratty blanket. Honestly, that was one of the greatest things that somebody's ever done for me. And that's one reason why I try to get back to anybody. But yeah, that was a moment that I decided to change it. And not saying everything changed immediately, but that was definitely the moment where I knew I couldn't live the life I was living anymore. And I didn't know how to live, but I knew I had to get help.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that you came with this realization that you didn't know how to change, but you knew you had to change everything.
Yeah.
Because that's what it takes in recovery, right? It takes a change of our friends, it takes a change of our mindset, it takes a change of our spirituality, which I want to spend some time on that here for the last part of the show. But it does, it takes that change. And to me, I'm a big believer in higher power. I choose to call God. I'm spiritual, not religious. And that's a moment where, for me, looking at that part of your story, I would say to myself, that was a God moment, right? Where that was implanted in you, and you had this like little moment of clarity. And with the push of having this daughter, you had to sign away rights to probably some of the pushing of the boundaries of your family. And boundaries are hard for families to have, but they're important. I think that they do help eventually, even though it's the hardest thing to do. I've had family members struggle with addiction. I've had to put boundaries in place with too, and it's one of the hardest things to do. What role has God played in all this for you? I mean, are you spiritual? What do you believe in?
That's an interesting one for me. My family, we're never like going to church, anything like that, but everybody's got their own sense of spirituality. For the longest time, like through everything that I put myself through, positions I put myself in, and the things that I was put through, I kind of like gave up thinking there was a God for a while. And I was like, and if there was, I was mad. But when I first started to get into recovery and like I started to get that, like I'd say the first 30 days of like mental clarity where your brain starts, working again. and you start to actually have some more like rational like thoughts, I started to get like a sense of like spirituality and like faith that came back to me. And one thing I truly believe is like you have to have faith. You have
Right.
to have faith, even if it's not in like the classic God that like, the church will see. You got to have faith in something higher than yourself. I can't be the highest person in the room for myself because when I
Yeah.
am, it doesn't matter. Like my decision, overrules everything and my will only takes me down. So I believe in like having faith that like, things will be okay, faith that like I will be okay, faith that I can make it, faith that I can become the man I want to be. Because if I don't have faith, then I have no hope. And
Yeah.
if I don't have hope, then the only thing I have is dope.
Dope. Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say the same thing. That's very
Yeah.
well said, dude. It's crazy to me at 25 years old how much insight you have, into these things that, I mean, for me, they've taken 20 plus years of my life to start to realize and put into practice and really see the difference. I think the harder situation is sometimes the more you are pushed towards faith and hope.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that works, right? And I like what you said, you have to have faith before you can have any hope. And the hope is the key. And that does start with believing in something that is bigger than yourself, right? We've all experienced that moment of it, whether you're an addict or not. You've experienced the moment of running your own life. And when you kind of maybe have that day where you go, yeah, I can't do this alone, man. And some people choose to believe in Christ, God, Buddha, Ali, whatever it is. And that's okay. I think as long as you have something bigger than yourself you're believing in, you're going to do a lot better and manage things a lot better with the help of something outside yourself. So got it, man. What kind of mindset? What's the mindset shift been? So you go from this whole thing. I mean, you're two different people to me. When I hear your story, and I've known you for a while, it's hard for me to like. I have a short circuit going on, honestly, because you're so far away from that now. And I know you're not that far into your recovery per se, according to most people's standards. But if you've been sober one day, it's a fucking miracle. So if you have 20 days stacked up, those 20 miracles, right?
Yeah.
That's a long time for us. And I know you have more time than I'm just saying.
You're
It's
good.
making a point to people. But what kind of mind shift have you had to have from that day on the park bench, all the stuff you went through the day on the park bench to now working on your recovery and working on yourself and becoming the man you want to be? What has that taken as far as like internal thinking?
I'd say one of the biggest things is I had to realize it's not just me, that I'm not a unicorn, that I don't like, you hear your story like everywhere that you go if you want to open your eyes and like your ears. But I had to shift it from like it's me, there's nobody understands me, only I understand me. Like, you wouldn't do the same things that I do if you've been through what I've been through.
Right.
And I had to understand that like I need people. I need people. I need people that, understand the things that I've been through, and I need people who accept me. And that's the thing I love about recovery is you can walk into a room and have 70 people who you don't know, hear like the worst moments of your life and hear like your biggest mistakes. And they'll come and give you a hug after. Like, you'll have 20
Yeah.
people text you in one day and be like, hey, like I seen like a frown on your face. Like, how are you doing today? And at first I thought I didn't need that. I thought I could hold everything that I've been through, everything that I've seen inside. And I realized that I couldn't. Like every time I just try to process it, it'd come out in my dreams and it'd come out in my actions, either maladaptive behaviors or use. But I need people. I
And
need,
those people you're talking about, I mean, that's what the opposite of what I was talking about earlier. That's the non-transactional stuff,
yeah,
right? There's a lot of people who hear your story and like move away from you
yeah,
or be like, okay, I better go like
yeah,
hide my wallet or some of that bullshit, right?
yeah.
And people just don't do that in recovery.
That's what I love.
Because we've all it's not about the exact same story, but it's about the same emotions, right? We've all been lost. Whether we've been in that trap house with 30 people coming in and out and cockroaches in a bucket to use the toilet. I mean, whether you're there or you're sitting up in your mansion and you're all alone and you realize you can't stop something that's eating up your life, your mind, and your soul, the pain is the same.
Yeah.
Right? The circumstances are different, but the pain is the same.
Pain is pain.
And that's what happens in the rooms of recovery is we get people that have been through that and on the other side of it, people that are in the middle of that, people that are coming to that, and everybody gets each other.
Yeah.
And it is crazy. It's crazy to have a whole room of sick people that all get each other.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. All walks of life, all different areas, all different places, different countries, but we come together on one common ground.
What's your thoughts on like I'm a big believer in obviously I'm like an optimist, right? I try to turn any situation I can to positive. People have called me a toxic optimist, which I freely welcome.
I'll take it.
I mean, look, I've been negative in my life and a natural alcoholic where I just think everything's out to get me and everything's going to suck for the rest of my life and nothing's ever going to go well. I've been that person that said, hey, this is happening for me, not to me. And I just have a lot happier life, like thinking the other way, so no one can really argue me out of the way that I think. But what is your belief on like positive thinking and self-talk and, law of attraction and like visualizing the way you want your life to be?
So my belief is that everything that I've been through, once I've been through it, I can either take it as a lesson and I can take it as a blessing in the sense of now I have like a little kernel of knowledge. Now I have like an experience that may help some people going
Right.
through or going towards the same one. Or honestly, I take it as like everything that I've been through and put myself through that can like it made me stronger. It made me like it gave me a sense of, a lot of views on the world, of a lot of places of where I want to be and a lot of places where I don't want to be. And I'm honestly, that's why I'm so vulnerable with my stories. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of
Yeah.
it in the sense of like now I can take all of this and I can rise above it. I can show that you can be something and you can be more.
Yeah.
Like I like the saying, you're not obligated to be the person you were 5 minutes ago. I like knowing that I can change. And it just took like a couple of people like actually believing in me when I couldn't even believe in myself, which is where
Right.
you find that in the rooms, where you
Right.
find that
Right.
in treatment. It just took that to see like, oh shit, maybe there is more to me than just, scars and tattoos and, affiliation. Like that person who like, I loved to be when I was younger, the person who plays piano, the person who had like scholarships to a couple schools, a person like, who went on Spain trips and lived with a family in Seville and everything like that for a few months. Like I can still be that person like, who's educated, who like, likes to carry himself kind of like you said, like to where you wouldn't know like my backstory. Like
No.
I don't know. I believe that I can be that and I can be more. And, with the help of people like, like you, like my life coach, like everybody else who's like, in my corner, like I'm slowly realizing day by day and slowly putting together days that, things are progressing. I think I finally found like, a way out officially.
No.
I got face tattoos, I got a record and everything. But I found I love to do physical fitness. That's like, my thing. And, I've had help with people. And next thing you know, like I'm going to be a personal trainer. I'm going to be a bodybuilding specialist. I'm going to be a nutritionist. And that's all due to like the
No.
rooms. That's all due to like people who like didn't hide their wallets, people who didn't look away. And it's due to like truly like sitting down with myself and sitting with myself and being like, hey, this is who I don't want to be. This is who I want to be. Now, how
No.
can I actually get there? And how can I take little steps to get there? And slowly and surely it's getting there.
Yeah, I love what you said about the people who didn't step away and the people who didn't worry about me taking their wallet.
Yeah.
Right. For anyone listening that wonders, there's like a lot of, I'm just going to call it, there's a lot of bitching that goes on
Yeah.
about, what we don't like and how we
Yeah.
don't like this type of person or this type of person or this group or whatever
Yeah.
else, and there really is only one race. It's a human race. Bottom line, right? We're all people when it comes to like the color of our skin or other things, nationalities, religions, all that kind of stuff. And it is sad sometimes to see it, but if you don't like something that you're seeing in those people, then help them.
Yes.
Right? Don't run away from it. Don't hide from it. Just complain about it. Go learn about that person and figure out, hey, what can I do to help you?
Yeah.
Is this something you want to do or do you want to get out of it? And can I help? Being in recovery means that we get to do that every single day. And I say get to because it's a pleasure. It's an opportunity. It's something to be grateful for that we get to help people. We no longer have to be the person who's hurting people and going around doing the things you were doing. I got chills when you said now you're going to do this personal training journey and be a nutritionist and a bodybuilding specialist. I mean, how crazy is that? For anyone listening, coming from that to that, what do you hope that people get out of your story that might be listening to this? What are you hoping to convey today?
I hope that honestly, there's a few youngins that hear this and may think that like, yeah, it's cool. You might have a car for a minute. You might have like, the females for a minute. You might have like money for a minute. But there's only three ways out. There's jails, institutions, and death. And that's the same with addiction. For anybody in affiliation, when it was first founded, it's supposed to be like Kizama blood. It's supposed to be brotherly love overrides destruction. And it served a purpose in the 70s, but now like you don't need that. Now all it
None of
stands.
that pertains now, does it?
No,
Yeah,
it's just like the kids think they're cool. Like you want to like live like a music video, which is just kind of like poisoning our youth every time. Like even the rappers put out a music video or the messages on social media.
for sure.
So I want people to get out of this that like you can put yourself through some of the worst things and you can still rise above it. And you can
Yeah.
choose to be a good person every day instead of destroying things, no matter what you were put through.
Right. No matter how hard your day is, and for many of my hard days, bro, like helping somebody else is what changed that day
Yes.
for me, getting out of my own head and getting out of my own way. Otherwise I'd be sitting in a cesspool of negativity and I'd still be using, It's interesting you said, no matter what you can do, you can turn it. It's kind of like you turn your story into power. And it reminds me, I had a conversation with one of my kids recently that they've had a pretty hard go with some things, honestly, a lot of trauma in their life. And, I was explaining to him hey, you can either take this and let it take you down, or you can take it and turn it into something good. And I had no idea that conversation made any type of impact. And it was like months later, just recently actually, that he was like, hey, I remember that. And that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm going back to school and trying to do better and getting sober and all that kind of stuff. And, it is true. And it's true fulfillment. It's true purpose in life to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. What are a couple of things you would have told your younger self, if you could go back now with this knowledge, how you feel right now compared to the way you were living, like looking at the whole picture. I mean, you've had 75 years of experience in 25 years, honestly.
Yeah.
You've lived several different lifetimes.
Definitely.
And it's amazing that you even live. What would you do if you could go back to that 12-year-old?
If I
What
could
would you
go
say?
back and meet myself, first off, I'd give him a hug and I'd tell him that you're loved. And I'd tell him that, just to love yourself first. Because it doesn't matter. You don't have to play a role. You don't have to put on a mask. You don't have to fit
Right.
any group or category. You don't have to try to be this person and that person. Just try to take some time, sit with yourself, enjoy the moment, be in the present, stay mindful, and try to enjoy, who you actually are and find who you are. I tell him that it's not cool to be, surrounded by violence. It's not cool to put yourself in situations, and like the more scars you get, like the tougher you are. No, like the tough thing to do and the more courageous thing to do is to be vulnerable. I tell them to open up, find people that truly listen to you and that you truly listen to, and tell them like how you feel. Like find some actual friends. Like don't care if like it's a goofy thing you like to do, like play chess or play the piano. Like don't listen to any of the haters, like because at the end of the day, none of those people are matter, and none of the people who are around you when you're using are going to be there.
Yeah, and what I hear from you there is like, be yourself, right? Don't worry about being anyone else and fitting anyone else. Because at the end of the day, I think we've all gone through that as adults a little bit, not as extreme as your version, but you get to a point where you're like, yeah, I was trying to pretend to fit in somewhere where I never was going to fit in.
Yeah.
And all you end up with is a waste of time. And unfortunately, time is the only thing that we can't buy more of, create more of, or get any backup. And it's like the ultimate currency, right? And so I know for me, that's a motivator to do the best I can every day with whatever situation's in front of me, and try to make the right decisions to do things. Because today I have a choice. I'm sober now, so I have a choice if I go and pick up again. I have a choice if I do the things needed to not go do that, right? And sometimes those choices, I've made bad ones along the path. And relapse is part of my story. It's not going to be the end of my story, thank God. And I finally don't feel like this disease is going to kill me, where I did feel that way for several years. It's finally at a point where it's like, yeah, I can use this as well to strengthen and just kind of put in that backpack of stories, and that's all they have to mean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Crazy, man. I'm just sitting here taken back by some of the stories you've told, and I know you have 100 more.
I got 1,000 more. I'm trying to write a new positive story though, more than the old ones.
Yeah. What does that look like? So I want to ask this question. One of the things I used to talk about a lot when I had my big stint in recovery was developing a recovery story.
Okay.
Right. And I would used to have these guys or anyone I'd work with in recovery and kind of teach them like, hey, write this out, like visualize this out. I just finished writing an ebook on manifesting your dreams and your reality that you want. And a big part of that was like visualization and writing out. So if you were to describe what your recovery story looks like or what you want it to look like, what does that look like on a daily basis for you?
For me, it's I want to have a gym one day, kind of like FTR, and I want it to be where there's like a business aspect of it, but I want it to be like a place to where anybody who's struggling, anybody who's like trying to like get into recovery or trying to stay sober, I want it to be where they can be membershiped and a place where they can feel safe, a place people can come, get out of the world. I want to train people and I want to, I want to coach people definitely. And like once I have a few years under my belt, I want to get into life coaching. I want to be able to go around maybe the world even, but definitely the US. I want to speak in like juvenile halls. I want to go to jails. I want to go back to some of those hoods and not stay there, not, hang out, but, be like, hey, like this is my story. This is what happened. This is how I changed. This is my life now. And that's why it's not like I want material things, but I want to be able to show some people that, hey, you can have a face tattoo, you can have a record. And those things don't have to stop you and you don't have to use them as excuses like I did for so long. Because I played the victim role, once I got so deep into it, oh, it's too late to change. I only have this way out. No, there's a million. If you can be willing to try, and that's the only thing is I want to teach people that as long as you have willingness, the sky isn't the limit.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I have this theory that those of us in recovery, whether you're man, woman, doesn't matter. I call it like God's warriors, right? Because we do this like on the boots on the ground type work.
Yeah.
Meaning when somebody's coming into a recovery program or you meet somebody who wants to get sober, like it's something we get to do, and it's really an obligation for us to like reach our hand out. And I think that's cool that you're planning on doing that with your story, because you never know. Like you change one kid's life, and they change somebody else's, and that person changes two, and that person changes four, and those two go change one more. I mean, it's this exponential ripple effect that you have. And I think by any terms of definition, if someone just heard the first part of your story, they would say you were a detriment to society.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They would say you're one of those people that are out there causing problems, costing,
taxpayers'
city,
money,
yeah,
lock them
all that
up, throw
stuff,
away the key.
all that
Yeah,
stuff. But what I want people that might think that way to hear here, or for anyone to hear, is that that can also be turned around, and then that disruptive part of your story, what you're doing now with your recovery and what you want to do, is going to far outweigh any of the devastation that ever caused. You know what I mean? And that's the cool thing in recovery, is we get a chance to go back and use that story in a way where we can maybe make more of a living amends. I mean, you can't go and apologize to all the people you hurt. Some of them aren't even around anymore. You can't go and make amends with people you had fights with and all that kind of stuff. But what you can do on a daily basis is you can do a living amends, where the better person you become each day, you're kind of doing that in honor of saying, hey, I want to do better with my life, and I'm going to do better with my life.
definitely.
It's not easy to do. What's the hardest thing for you been about recovery? What's the hardest thing that you've had to really work on, swallow, adapt to?
The hardest thing is honestly just sitting with myself.
Yeah,
Because yeah,
yeah,
sitting with myself and not distracting, not avoiding. One thing that's I'm starting to work on is like letting emotions come in, sit with them, recognize them. Don't have to change how I feel in that moment. Just let it ride out.
right.
But the other thing is like support. And right now I got a lot of support, and that's what's been saving me. Pretty easy if you dive in. Not saying life is easy, but it gets a lot easier to put your head on your pillow every night sober. You truly dive into the program. Like today, played sober dodgeball and had a blast. Took me
Yeah,
back to my kid years, before drugs. After this, go to the gym. Next, go to a meeting. Text a couple of people, and I got people who will text me, okay, hey, 3 things you're grateful for right now. And if
yeah,
I'm in a negative mindset, or I'm in a mindset that, I'm real selfish and I'm like, oh man, this sucks, that sucks, kind of snaps me out of it.
yeah,
So those are the things I've had to do, definitely. And still got a long way to go, but we're getting there.
yeah. Yeah, I'd say you've came a long way
I appreciate
by
that.
any means. I mean, the fact that you're alive is a long
Yeah.
distance, and the fact that you got out of what you were doing and had that moment of clarity is big. I want you to recognize that. A lot of times we downplay our wins,
Yeah.
and we what's the word I'm looking for? We exaggerate our losses, right?
Definitely.
That's
Definitely.
also kind of one
Definitely.
of our thinking errors as an addict or an alcoholic. And substance use disorder is no joke. You do have to change everything about you. And you really have to be willing to sit with yourself like that in incredible pain and make a choice at that point that you're not going to go use something to stop feeling that way.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned gratitude. What role has gratitude played?
Gratitude. I love talking about gratitude because for me, gratitude is everything. If I wake up resentful and I spend just 24 hours or even 14 hours resentful, and I go to bed the same night resentful, I will relapse. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be
Yeah,
next week,
so true.
but I will relapse. Um, Gratitude is everything, because if I don't have gratitude, the only thing I was grateful for the longest time was substances and the relief that substance momentarily gave me. I wasn't grateful for my life. I wasn't grateful for myself. I wasn't grateful for the gifts and the opportunities I've been given. But once I sit down and I wake up and I say, hey, I'm in Utah, I can see these beautiful mountains. There can be snow on the mountains if I want to go hang out in the snow, and then I can play basketball in a t-shirt or softball.
Yeah.
I'm inside. I'm not on the streets. I have the choice today whether or not I want to use. Before, for the longest time, I wasn't mentally able to say hey, it's a choice. No, I have to.
Yeah.
I got to be grateful that I got water. I got to be grateful I got shoes. I get to be grateful that I have friends. I get to be grateful that I have people who I can reach out to, are willing to take everybody's going through pain, especially in recovery. But the gratitude that I have for the people who will take their time and take some of those metaphorical rocks that I have in my backpack and lift those out and carry them for
Yeah.
me, that's a huge thing. So as long
Yeah.
as I can stay grateful, the days are a lot better, because in reality, I know people who had it 10 times, 100 times worse than me. People who never made it out. I got to remember the bad things. I got that short-term memory loss to pain, which allowed me to hey, I got through this. Now let me go
Right.
back and try it again. And no, I can't do that. I have to remember the pain I put myself through. I have to remember the things I've seen. I have to be grateful, because if I'm not grateful, then I just my life is kind of it's kind of a loss. Whereas there's people who
Yeah.
truly lost their life who would kill to have the life that I have now, and I can't
Yeah.
forget that.
I think we have to remind ourselves of that. Like here in the U.S., we live better, even if you're at poverty or below poverty level, you're still living better than 96% of the
Exactly,
planet,
exactly.
right? But it's amazing how the human mind works. When we fall out of gratitude, we can bitch about the most simple things, and then it just turns into more. And in my experience with that is same thing. If I lose my gratitude, then I'm going to relapse. I'm going to
Yeah,
use over it, and it may not be today. It may take a month. It may take two. But this is a cunning, baffling, powerful, patient disease.
yes,
And the other thing about gratitude is what you put out there is you're going to get back. So I know, for example, for me, if it's with my relationship and I'm just constantly complaining about my wife or whatever, then we have more fighting, we have more issues. Whereas if I'm grateful for even the little things every day with that, or grateful that I even have a partner to begin with, then it tends to go smoother. And I think that's like the power of our mind, right? It's the power of our mind and our subconscious. And I mean, we don't even understand how powerful our minds are, and you can direct it one way or the other. You can direct it the way that you were directing it for the first half of your life, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Or you can direct it the other way that you're going to hear for the next half of your life, dude. And I really am looking forward to seeing what you do, bro, and how far you take this and how many people you help.
I appreciate that.
So as well, I have a goal to go out and start speaking, doing some things, and I think it'd be cool one day we might be sharing a stage and helping inspire some people to have a little bit better life.
I would love that.
So very cool, bro. Well, in closing, if there was one takeaway you'd want somebody to take from this conversation, addict or not, just human being, right? What would you want them to pick up on here and use?
Connection. I'd say stay connected, stay, in contact with the people who truly care about you, and make an effort to go out and care about others as well. Because that'll give you like a sense of purpose. It'll give you like a great feeling. It'll give you like, a sense of belonging. For the longest time, like I wanted to isolate, and isolating made it easier for me to rationalize all my decisions and everything that I do.
Right.
So I'd say stay connected, stay involved, and don't think that you have to be anybody or anything for anyone. Just be who you are and try to be the best person you can be. And we're all going to make mistakes, but it doesn't matter. It just matters how you rebound and how you get back.
Solid advice, man. I love all that. Well, Mario, it's been an amazing conversation. Again, I appreciate you coming on. This is definitely one of my favorite shows I think that I've done so far. I say that about a lot of them, so I don't want to offend anybody who's been on the show or who's coming up. But dude, just hearing, we talk about the depths of despair and then what recovery looks like in this beautiful journey. And I mean, you're defining that, bro. You're defining that with people. I mean, people around you, people you're helping already. I think that's one of the amazing things that I see about you is that you're newly sober, fairly new, soaking stuff like a sponge, but you're also the first person that's offering help and saying, hey, let me help this guy or woman that's struggling, and how can I be a friend? And it's crazy to think from where you came from that you can even be there today, right? Cool, man. Well, I wish you all the best of luck, bro. I know we're going to stay in touch, and just want to say genuine thanks for coming on again and sharing some inspiration with everybody.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor. I appreciate it.
For sure, bro. Well, that's it for today's episode of Let's Do More. I hope you found inspiration, hope, and some powerful takeaways to help you on your own journey of growth and resilience. Remember, no matter what you're facing, you have the strength to overcome it and the power to create positive change in your life and community. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, download, and review the podcast. It really helps us reach more people who need to hear these stories. And don't forget to follow us on social media and stay connected and be part of the Let's Do More community. You can find us on Facebook at Let's Do More Podcast, Instagram and TikTok at Let's Do More.life, X at Let's Do More Life, and our primary channel is on YouTube at Let's Do More. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, share your stories, or let us know what topics you would like to hear about next. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, remember, let's keep pushing forward, inspiring each other, and doing more for ourselves and the world around us. Take care, and I'll see you on the next show.